I think we should start. It's dot 6.
Yes, yes, please. Thank you.
So, welcome, ma'am. A very, very, very warm welcome. And before we get into everyone knows who Zareen Daruwala is, but before we get into her introduction, I'll just hand it over to Madhura, ma'am, to introduce Aspire for her and IMS.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashna. It's my pleasure to welcome Zareen to our platform. And we're only 7 months old. Aspire for Her is a very unique social enterprise. And our mission is to motivate young women who are 18 to 25-year-old to get into the workforce and to persevere, to stay there, and to pursue awesome careers. We use a whole lot of nudges and triggers to ensure that this dream is triggered in their head. And one of those tools that we use is the platform like this. And we have inspirational leaders like Zareen who actually come and talk to them one-on-one. And that's an absolute pleasure for us. And it's a matter of pride that India's largest international bank, Standard Chartered Bank, the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank, Zareen, is here with us this evening. So warm welcome to you, Zareen. We are delighted to welcome you here.
Thank you.
Standard Chartered Bank, thank you. Standard Chartered Bank needs no introduction. They're one of the largest banks, international banks in the country today. And my personal favorite bank, because I have spent 17 years working in Standard Chartered Bank. And it has shaped my career, defined my career. And if there is anything that I kind of want to inspire all of you today with, then it is, that longevity, it is that kind of amazing careers that banks like Standard Chartered actually offer to young women. It's a very diversity-focused organization. Actually, we don't need to say that because you see the proof of that sitting right here with us in the form of its first female CEO, Zareen Daruwala. Zareen, of course, has had a very illustrious career, which Ashna will talk about. But before that, I want to also talk a little bit about our very special association tonight with IMS Learning. IMS Learning is a premier test prep institute, and they have ensured more than 1 million students have gone on to realize their dreams in studying in higher education, whether it's MBA, MS, or any other form, both in India and abroad. When we started speaking to IMS, we suddenly realized that there was absolutely a lot in common. And the founder of IMS, Kamlesh Sajnani, is also a passionate crusader for women's empowerment. And he says that our dream is to ensure that all the girls in Aspire for Her follow absolutely amazing careers by ensuring that they have great education and they actually move into great jobs after that. So that's his dream. He wants to ensure that 10 very disadvantaged girls from across India, we are able to make them go to organizations, institutions like Harvard and Wharton. Now, this is a very audacious dream, but this is a dream that I cannot but always tell myself because that motivates me and inspires me every day. So thank you, IMS, for being our partner for this event. And this is a very long-term relationship, we know. We really look forward to working with all you guys as well. Thank you to all of you who are attending from IMS. And we hope that all of you will also look not only at just this webinar to become a part of Aspire for Her, but to a whole lot more that we promise to bring you through the coming weeks, through the coming months, and the coming years. So thank you very much. With that, Ashna, I hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Madhura ma'am. Now coming to our esteemed speaker of the year, Zareen Daruwala. She has been the Chief Executive Officer of Standard Chartered Bank India since 2016. In a career spanning over 30 years, she has worked across areas of banking ranging from wholesale banking, agri-finance, corporate planning, investment banking, and credit. A rank holder in chartered accountancy, Zareen ma'am has also won the President's Gold Medal, topping the All India Company Secretary exams. She's also been conferred the CA Business Achiever Award by the Institute of Chartered Accountancy of India. Prior to Standard Chartered, Zareen ma'am worked at ICICI Bank, where she spent 26 years of her career, starting out as a management trainee, eventually becoming president and the head of wholesale banking business. She was also selected as one of the top 30 most powerful women in the Indian business by Business Today 7 times and features in the BT Hall of Fame for being a consistent performer. She was also named the 5th most powerful woman in business by Fortune India in 2019 and continues to be the highest ranked banker in the overall listing. A very warm welcome and thank you so much for being here, ma'am.
Thank you.
So without further ado, let's jump right into the questions. The first question for the evening is, when you were in college, did you envision yourself 10 years out? Is it any different from where you are right now? And can you tell us more about your journey on becoming a banker?
Yeah, sure. So I graduated or finished my CA when there was no computer, no internet. There were computers, but no internet, no mobile phone, no ATM, no credit cards. Housing loan industry was very different. So I sort of came from a very different era. I don't think any of you would even relate to that era that I started out in. So when I qualified, I went to Mr. Malegam. Mr. Malegam was the senior most chartered accountant on whom I'd done my articleship. And for people who have done CA, Mr. Malegam is like a iconic figure. So I went to him after I got my CA degree, and I had a few job offers and I wasn't clear which one to join. And he actually told me that, look at ICICI, it's a good place for women. I still remember those words. And I sort of got through to ICICI Limited. And that's how my journey started. I must say that as a chartered accountant, I was working along with MBAs. Chartered accountancy doesn't prepare you for real life. And 6 months was a big struggle. I was put in a department which had complicated, exchange currency kind of hedging kind of structures. Took a while, but I have this never say die attitude, and I learned. And then after a point, I started doing quite well there. And those days, ICICI was 1,000 people institution. Of course, when I left, it was 50 or 60,000 people. And as the organization grew, I think I grew. I think one thing the new generation can't relate, but sometimes just staying in the same organization, and when the organization is growing, you grow with it. Very often, a lot of the people keep changing jobs, and finally, you're not necessarily landing up anywhere. So I think I feel I did the right thing, just sort of staying with the organization and being part of its growth journey. The reason I shifted to StanChart was because it was a CEO job, and clearly it is something that anybody aspires to be a CEO. And that's my journey. Along the way, I landed up doing many roles. And one of the reasons I feel ICICI builds leaders. And let me tell you, even today, in the financial services space, there'll be at least 15 to 20 CEOs even now, at the moment, in the financial services space who are ex-ICICI people. That's the power of the organization in building leadership. And I've been asked very often that, is this something special that ICICI does? Actually, there's nothing special that ICICI does, but what it really sets you up for is challenges. And also it moves you around. So I've moved a lot, and because I've moved lots of roles, you get a 360-degree perspective of, how things are done. So I started out in resources department, then I went on to ICICI Securities, which was the first joint venture in those days in 1994. The first joint venture when JP Morgan and ICICI collaborated. first joint venture were a foreign entity. Those were the days when India was liberalizing. And then I went on to go to a group called Major Client Group, where we did lending to large corporates. And then I was asked to do the rural and agri business in ICICI. Then I came back to corporate banking. So I've moved quite a lot. And I think that really has helped me broaden my lens and perspective. Of course, having come to StanChart, there's a lot of learning again, because I was a pure corporate banker. So I had to learn many things when I came here. So that's my journey.
I think that's a very interesting insight that will help us younger people also as we're stepping into the job market. And one thing that I really loved is that maybe everyone thinks that they should shift jobs, but staying with one organization and growing with it was very insightful. So moving on to the next question, can you talk a little bit more about your career trajectory and how it was eventually becoming the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank and how you managed a major turnaround?
Yeah. So when I came to StanChart, StanChart India had a few share of problems. We had some stressed accounts, non-performing assets. But apart from that, I think what happens is when any entity is not doing too well, what you find is the morale is down, people are not really confident. So it's not only the financial side, but it's also the culture that you need to work on. So when I joined, I actually started looking at the corporate side. And one of the things that I really worked on was, how do we do credit decisioning? And how do we use technology tools to enable good credit decisioning? How do we use forensic skills to do good credit decisioning? So we worked with a fintech startup, built a lot of tools which had AI and machine learning. And we built internal tools also. We also worked with a forensic firm. We continue to work with a forensic firm. And because we started onboarding a certain good set of clients, now the portfolio is very healthy. The other thing that I did was we actually exited a lot of clients who I thought were not sound. And that has really paid off. So in this cycle, we don't see as much stress as one would have thought. We also had a business retail side, which also was kind of stagnating. And year before last, I started getting personally involved in the retail business because it was not doing well. I've never done retail banking in my life. 2 months, I spent time sitting with 3 or 4 levels below me, and I would spend hours learning the business. And after 2 months, I double-hatted. I ran retail and I did my CEO job. For 15 months, I didn't have a head of retail. I did it myself, and I turned it around. And I turned it around in a very meaningful way. So to me, again, the big lesson was that there's nothing that if you set your mind to it, you can't learn. I mean, at any age, you can learn and you can unlearn. And of course, along the way, as a CEO, you need to sort of decide your brand and marketing strategy. You need to understand technology. You need to decide how, what kind of technology, how are you going to be at least cutting edge? You need not be the first in the market like Amazon or Google, but at least you have to be a good close follower. So those are the big learnings along the way for me. You're on mute.
Sorry. I think it's really inspiring how there's no age for learning and how your professional career took these turns, but you still managed to do a major turnaround. So speaking of challenges, what challenging aspects of your job are there, not only professionally, but even personally as a female leader?
Actually, frankly, for me, challenge is only in your head. If you have that attitude, you can find solutions. So my approach always has been that whatever has happened, let's look at what can we do differently and how can we resolve it. So moment you stop agonizing about the challenge, the negative energy is all gone. It's all positive energy. And it's all about how can I solve it and what can I do to solve it. And that's how I am. I actually, I don't brood over decisions or most of the time, of course, every day you're expected to do tons of decisions. Maybe one odd one may not go the right way, but the idea is to just learn and then just move ahead and not look at challenges, because in sitting in the seat that I am, you'll every day have one challenge, a big or a small. It might be small, sometimes it can be very big. And it's all about, okay, now let's try and fix it. That's how my approach has been.
So no matter how big the challenge, it shouldn't hold you back and you should keep striving towards your goal. So what does a typical day look like in the life of Zareen Daruwala? And everyone says that bankers are always working around the clock. So is there a good work-life balance in the banking sector?
That's a very generic question, the last one. But anyway, I think when you go up the ladder, actually your calendar, what you see in the morning is not what, when you look at your day, it may not exactly play out the way your calendar is designed, or appointments which are there, because every day you will have surprises or something that is burning and you need to sort of drop something and, you know, look at doing something else. So it's juggling many balls and ensuring no ball falls. I think that's very important. So that's how life is, and it's a daily thing. So after a point, you get quite used to running it that way. In terms of work-life balance, again, I think the way I have done it, of course, it doesn't necessarily fall that way, but the way I try to do it is Monday to Friday for office and weekends for home, because weekdays, really, there is nothing like, I have grown-up kids, so I'm quite fortunate that way now. But even when kids were young, I would like do all their study work over the weekend. Weekdays, I wouldn't sort of worry too much other than ensuring their homework is done. So that's how I've been. And that really helps so that you have some dedicated time for the personal side. And the big thing I've learned over time, and I think that's a very big learning, is that don't bring your home problems to work and work problems to home, because you'll be a messed up person. And I've learned to compartmentalize my two lives, and it has really helped, because if you don't do that, you'll be constantly stressed out at both ends and you'll mess up both your lives. So that's very important. And also, I mean, you need a support system. I think for every young girl, I would advise have a very good support system. So I had my mother, mother-in-law, and my husband all chipping in to help me. Otherwise, you can't do what the kind of load that you take, workload, you can't do it unless you have a good support system. And if people don't have their mother or mother-in-law staying close by, then at least have a very good support system in terms of some help, household help or whatever. So that's very important. Without that, it's very tough.
So a good support system and prioritizing what is needed on that day of in terms of work as well as family. So moving on, do you think it's important to have a good mentor or leader to provide guidance in your life?
So absolutely, you need to have somebody you look up to. I was very, very fortunate. I've worked under exceptional leaders. So I talked of Mr. Maligam, but of course I was too junior and he was too senior. So obviously we used to just observe him and admire him when we were young. And I must say that I met Mr. Maligam even last year. I've been in touch with him, and one compliment he paid, which was quite nice. He says he feels like a Maruti car which is driving slowly, and the people who worked under him are going in a sports car. So that was very nice of him to say that. But having said that, I think these are iconic people under whom I've worked. I also worked, my first boss was a lady called Lalita Gupte. She went on to become the joint managing director of ICICI Bank. And she was a deputy general manager. Tons of things I learned from her. So I was very young, first year, and those days we would type letters and take to her for signature. And she had that eye for detail, and she would find that one error in my letter. And obviously, once or twice you make those mistakes, then you learn. And I really can't tell you how much I bless her, because today I have a real eye for error. I can spot in one 50-page document, I can spot all the errors, because she has trained us that way, right? She was tough when I would make the errors. Obviously, you get a mouthful. But that learning and that training has really helped. She also had a great human side. If you would work late, she would even send food from home, and she was really cute in many ways. And the other thing I remember with her, one day she was signing some documents, and I was sitting next to her, and she said, "What are you thinking about?" And I said, "I don't know if I'll ever reach your level." And she admonished me. She says, "Don't ever aim so low." And she was a general manager, I think. And so, the kind of leaders we worked with, the second person who I worked with, absolutely exceptional human being, was Mr. Vagul. For people who don't know who Mr. Vagul is, Mr. Vagul became the CEO of a public sector bank at the age of 40, a record not beaten even today. Because typically you become the CEO of a public sector bank when you are well past your 50. And he became a Bank of India chairman at 40 years. That's the kind of phenomenal person that he was. And I was really, really fortunate to have worked with him, worked very closely with him. And Mr. Vagul, again, learned many things. One of the things that I really learned was humility. And Mr. Vagul was very down to earth. And when he was the chairman and I was a 2-year-old in the organization, he would directly call me and engage with me. And it was amazing, the kind of exposure we got at that kind of age. To the extent I remember accompanying Mr. Vagul as a 2-year-old in the organization for a meeting with the Deputy Governor of RBI with him. So that was the kind of exposure one got. I've been really fortunate to have worked with people like him. And Mr. Vagul, for people who may not know, was an institution builder. So the CRISIL, which is now the rating agency, was started by Mr. Vagul. ICICI Securities was started by Mr. Vagul, and ICICI Venture. So these were entities. He was an institution builder, literally. And a lot of institutions which were built where ICICI took some minority stake, also, a lot of them were under Mr. Vagul's leadership. And then, of course, I worked with Mr. Kamath, who most of you would know perhaps, who are in finance. Mr. Kamath is one of those absolutely, he was a leader, different leadership styles. So I worked with different leadership styles. And Mr. Kamath's leadership style was absolutely, I used to be scared entering his room. We used to go so prepared when we would go to his room. Because Mr. Kamath, if you don't know your stuff, you can be sure to get a mouthful from him. And again, I bless the leaders that I worked with, because Mr. Kamath, we all learned to be extremely well prepared. And today that has stayed with me. I will never get into a meeting without preparation. And some of those learnings that you take from various leaders. Mr. Kamath, of course, was a great visionary. Mr. Kamath, actually the whole retail banking in India has been taken off thanks to Mr. Kamath's vision. So the ATMs, the credit cards, the housing loans, the debit cards, and Mr. Kamath's understanding of technology. Mr. Kamath started ICICI Prudential Insurance Company. Mr. Kamath started ICICI Lombard, the insurance company. Absolute visionary. And I have been extremely lucky to have been sitting with him in a lot of the board meetings, because once I became the president and Mr. Kamath was the chairman, so I think I would have had at least 5 to 6 years of listening to him as the chairman of the board. And there have been huge learnings for me with him. So as I said, no formal mentorship, but very, very lucky to have worked with absolutely illustrious people as my bosses.
I think that was a really interesting insight into your life and how.
I must also interrupt for a minute here because Mr. Vagul actually also connected me with Zareen. So I am also deeply, deeply indebted to Mr. Vagul because he has blessed Aspire for her. And he has said that you tell me what help you require, and I will ensure that I do whatever is within my power. And absolute humility. And he doesn't know me. He doesn't know me from any place. Okay, and it was just a phone call and a connect, and his blessing to us, I think, is the most invaluable treasure that we have at Aspire for her, really. So I really wanted to put this to say that he's an amazing person,
Yeah.
no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Lots of questions coming in, Ashna, for you, for Zareen, in fact. So you might want to start a little earlier the Q&A because they are all kind of
So we'll move on to the next question swiftly. What are some steps that the younger generation can take from your personal experience and certain key skills for anyone that's looking to get into the banking sector?
So I would say, for me, attitude is number one thing. So I would really say that can-do attitude is extremely important. And moment you have that attitude, you'll do it. That is what I've seen over time with people I've worked, and even my own attitude is can-do attitude. So that is extremely important. The other thing, of course, is ethics. I think that is something in banking that you need to have a lot of it, and that really holds you in good stead, because there will always be shades of gray, right, when you take a decision. And unless your foundation is very strongly there, I mean, like in banking, you're regulated industry, so you have to follow not the law in letter but in spirit, and that's extremely important. And that, to me, is, if anybody is looking at getting into banking, some of these ethics, value system, those are very, very important. In terms of personal traits, I think for me, it's very important that person sort of is diligent and has the right attitude. Learning, frankly, a lot of people don't know, but they can learn if you have the right attitude. So it's not necessary. I gave my own example. I didn't know retail banking, but I learned it. So you can always learn a part. I'm sure when I moved from in ICICI from various roles, I didn't know it. So your attitude is what makes you learn very fast, and that is, to me, very, very important again.
So a can-do attitude and ethics, I think that was some really valuable advice that all of us should keep in mind, and it'll be helpful in the future as well. So I think this is one question that's on everyone's mind, that what career opportunities can the younger generation look for at a bank like Standard Chartered? Does an MBA still add value? And what does the job market look like in the near future?
So actually, the career opportunities are very different in a bank. So for example, it starts with corporate banking. If you are in corporate banking, again, you can be in transaction banking, you can be in corporate finance, you can be in mergers and acquisitions team. You could be doing credit underwriting, you could be doing risk analytics. So you can be in forex trading, foreign exchange markets part. So career opportunities are huge. If you're on the retail side, you could again be doing credit cards, you can be doing savings, mobilization, you can be doing credit underwriting again. You could be in compliance function, you could be in there are many, many roles. You could be, even if you have a, as an MBA, if you have your undergrad in technology, then you can be in the tech function. So many, many, many opportunities in a bank. In a bank like Standard Chartered, actually, of course, we recruit from India, but I think a lot of people then look forward to working in other countries. And the biggest benefit of working in a multinational bank is you will land up working in a few countries outside India also at some point of time. Of course, that's provided person wants to, but typically people do land up working. And that really, if you ask me, one of the things that was my big learning again in Standard Chartered was understanding different economies, because you land up learning about you're in meetings where 10 country CEOs meet. What are the dynamics of those markets? What is the macroeconomic situation? What is the political situation there? There's a huge learning that you get and kind of broadens your vision. And job market, I would say that it's going to be tough next few months. But my own sense is it will be 6-9 months more of pain. Most organizations are not recruiting right now, including ours. There's a freeze, global freeze on hiring, not India alone. So
I think that's given everyone much more clarity on what they can expect for the future. So banking is a majorly male-dominated field. So does the glass ceiling still exist for women in banking? And are women at workplaces viewed any differently now than they were before?
I would say, actually, it's not as male dominated as maybe some other industries. Average financial services is about 30% women, which is not bad. And we've seen many, many women CEOs, especially in India. We saw Arundhati Bhattacharya, Shikha Sharma, Naina Lal Kidwai. So there were, and lots in the public sector also. There was Mrs. Iyer in Bank of India. So we've actually seen quite a few female CEOs. So I wouldn't say there's really a glass ceiling. I think in public sector banks, the toughest thing for a woman is they get moved around a lot, physical locations, and then they have to do some rural posting or some such requirement is there. That's tough on a woman, actually. I think as having worked in a private sector bank and in a foreign bank, I think that's the easy thing. I think they go a little easy on women in terms of where they move them around. But I would say that glass ceiling in financial services is not there, actually. I would say that. But yeah, in manufacturing, in factory kind of factory kind of setup, yes, it is tough for a woman to really find her own niche.
So I think people will be more positive in terms of entering the banking sector now, and especially young girls will pursue more leadership roles. So you've been extremely successful in your field. How do you define success for your work?
I would say success is not one thing, right? Success is many things that you do along the way that you feel good about. And every time I think your bar should go higher as to what you feel you should be aspiring for. Let me tell you, I've not been overtly ambitious. It's just that it's come along the way. Because I remember when I reached senior general manager in ICICI, and I told one of my colleagues, I think I'm reaching my glass ceiling. And I never thought I'll ever become CEO. I just got this coming my way. So, but I think it's good to keep setting your bar higher. And bar higher may not be necessarily your levels in the ladder, but about your own performance. What do you want to do? How do you want to expand? How do you want to grow your income? How do you grow your income means not your personal income, but if you're delivering a certain revenue to the bank, how do you want to grow that? So I think that's very important. You keep setting your own goalpost and keep trying to reach that. That is success, actually.
I think that's a very simple yet valuable perspective to success, and a very humble one. We've all been facing a global pandemic these past few months. So have our present global challenges redirected your interest and inspired you to work in some unexpected ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I think being a global bank, actually, we luckily had the knowledge of Hong Kong and China going through the corona. And to some extent, I can't say we're fully prepared, but to some extent, we had started planning that we need laptops, we need these internet dongles, and we had sourced all that. But we never planned for a full lockdown. We all thought we'll have to have maybe one-third people coming in rotation, keeping physical distance. So when this happened, actually, the biggest issue was that March 31st is closing for most Indian corporations. And this happened just few days before that. And that period is an extremely busy period for banks and companies. And suddenly we had to get a lot of people working from home. Not everybody had their laptops. A lot of people work on desktops in office. And the other important thing, there are 2-3 things which are very complex technology-wise to do. One is call center. So call center, the way it works is if you as a customer dialing in, if one person attending is busy, your call goes to the next one. Now, when people are sitting at home in various locations, how do you ensure the call hops? So those are complex technologies. And in 2-3 days, our people actually cracked it and delivered it. So for 2-3 days, of course, customer service did take a beating, but that was similarly in financial markets where traders are doing rupee dollar or dollar euro or all these kind of trades. You need, and transactions happen by the second. If you have 5 minutes, the rupee dollar moves. You can't have that. And you need recorded lines. You need a Reuters screen. So all these functionalities have to be delivered to the traders at their house. And again, there are a lot of regulatory requirements on trading, which RBI wants, because so voice recording and many other things. So those things we took few days, but after that, I think we've managed to, everybody's working from home. We have 85% people working from home even now. I think couple of things that really were big learnings. One is you have to think of mental health of people. You have to think through your heart, not your head alone in this period, because people are going through tough times. It's not easy for people to manage. Very often people have small houses. The other thing that was a big learning, we had our first COVID case pretty early, in maybe early May, in our bank. And we found we were completely unprepared, and that person was very critical, and we were scrambling to get that person. At 3 in the night, we got him admitted in an ICU. Luckily, he survived. But it taught us many things. That one incident taught us how poorly we were prepared for handling COVID cases. So then we got our act together. We had a pandemic working group, but we found that we were not equipped to handle, and how then we organized ourselves. We had tie-ups with hospitals across India. So this COVID has taught us many things, how to sort of handle everyday situation kept changing for a month or two. And also then we had huge regulatory requirements. We had to give moratorium to customers. A lot of this we had to do, all of us sitting at home, taking decisions. So many things along the way. And also customers were sending from their Gmails, telling us to do certain transactions. How do you know it's genuine transactions that they're asking you to do? So we had to redo all our processes in how we will sort of take customer instructions. Many things the bank had to rewire themselves for.
I think given the economic landscape and how sudden things changed, adapting to the new normal was a major challenge for everyone. So I also read in an article that your management is feedback driven, and I found that very interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so I like giving feedback, and my style is instant feedback. Somebody makes an error and I just give it then and there, because my view is that intelligent people, when they're given feedback, actually change for the better. And I've seen a lot of people, if you take feedback constructively, which is the expectation, and you're not in denial, then I think people really change for the better and they become better leaders. And I feel that is, you're doing a service by telling somebody. I've received feedback constantly, as I told you. Mr. Kamath would give you one big stick if you did something, or your note had even one error. So we've been trained that way, and I think it's good for people to know where they stand and not do it as a year-end conversation when you might not even remember all the facts after 12 months of what that individual did. It's always good to give feedback immediately. In our bank, we have an app which is called Feedback 365. So if you want to not give it face to face and you want to do it through an app, you can actually do it. I prefer to do pick up the phone and give the feedback, but some people are not very comfortable doing face to face, so they can do it through the app where they can give their feedback.
I think the idea of an app is something very unique and different. Speaking of Standard Chartered Bank, it's doing some great work in promoting women employment. They're committed to having 30% of senior roles by women by the end of this year. So would you like to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so StanChart has signed the UK Finance Charter, where we've said that 30% of our senior leadership will be women. It's in some countries we have higher than 30%, but in some countries it's not easy to touch 30%. So while, for example, StanChart Bank India, we have 30% women, but not necessarily 30% at all levels. And that's where the focus has been. Clearly it's a journey, because so what we've done, what I have sort of worked with my HR team, is that we can't suddenly have women in the leadership. We have to start catching them in the middle management. And what do we do at the middle management level? So we have training cohorts. We've identified some of our talent. We also have lots of things for our women colleagues. Like we have, baby for women who have small babies. We have, for example, in Prime Bandra Kurla, we have a 50 babies, daycare center. So in 3 locations, we have that. So we've tried to do a lot to enable our women colleagues. Of course, that daycare center is not getting used because of COVID, but otherwise it was quite a big support. So we've tried to do many things to enable our women colleagues. And also we have this Women's India network where a lot of female colleagues are taking the leadership and sort of trying to mentor some young girls. So many initiatives are there to support our female colleagues.
So that was the last question for the evening. Now, before we take up the questions from the participants, we'll just play a short game. We call it the Game of Ones. It's a rapid fire question answer of sorts. So I'll be asking you a question, and ma'am, you'll have to answer in a word or so. Okay.
Oh, only one.
If possible, it doesn't have to be a word.
Okay.
So one mantra you follow.
Persistence overcomes resistance.
Wow, I think that's so powerful. One movie you love watching.
One movie that I really liked was Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List.
It's a crowd favorite.
Yeah.
One person that has inspired you.
Actually, I've already talked of 2 people, I would say, Mr. Vagul and Mr. Kamath, for me. Yeah.
Okay. One destination you want to visit?
Antarctica.
Oh, wow. One thing you would want to change in the world?
Poverty.
I think that's the need of the hour. One thing you would want to do post-retirement?
I definitely want to do something in the NGO space, particularly something we as Standard Chartered do very well is preventable blindness. 85% of blindness in India is curable. And all it needs is maybe 7,000 rupees operation in most cases to cure the blindness. So.
One thing that keeps you motivated?
I think learning and unlearning.
Okay. One thing you would want to tell all the young people that are watching today?
I would say never compromise on ethics and value.
I think that's something that we're all going to keep in mind. So let's take up some audience questions. Someone has asked, is it important to have an interest in accounts for making a career in finance?
No, not necessary, but it helps, because if you don't understand the debit side of the balance sheet and the credit side of the balance sheet, it becomes tough, but not impossible. As I said, it can be learned, but helps if you have an accounting understanding, basic accounting understanding.
Okay. What is the future of banks in the AI world, and how is AI going to change for banking?
So artificial intelligence actually is something that all banks are using, mainly for analytics, and also predicting customer behavior. So if Zareen Daruvala is going to a mall and she generally shops, say, in Zara, and she's near Zara, the AI you can predict that you will immediately send her, oh, this credit card has this tie-up with Zara. Would you want to shop in Zara? This is the offer. So that's the power of AI. So it's all about how banks harness this power and actually use it to create customer delight. So that's where the world is headed. Having said that, I think the other new trend that is happening is pure digital bank. So our own bank has launched a pure digital bank in Hong Kong, which is now becoming the new thing. I guess India will take a while before you have a pure digital bank where there's no branches, but you will use an app and do all your self-servicing. It's a bit like Amazon. You keep self-servicing, and then there's a help desk or a contact center. So that's the new trend that I'm seeing in banking.
Okay. How did you improve the bank culture?
So if you ask me, the biggest challenge has been culture, and it doesn't change overnight. It's quite deep rooted. So what I did was I actually wanted to drive change. So I asked a few people, 40, 50 people, to volunteer to be what I call change agents. Even now I continue that program in StanChart. And I asked them to work on projects of making changes in processes. So I would do a call with the front line and ask them, tell me all your challenges. And then I would ask the change agents to work on those challenges and solve it. And over last 3 years, we've done 200 such major changes in processes, systems, whatever it takes to make a seamless experience for our internal people or for the customers.
So your strategy for team formation and selecting individuals for a position?
I think, it's not one thing that strikes you about an individual that you decide, oh, this is the person. It's all about when you work with somebody over time, you make out that this person has the right attitude. Also, how he deals with his team members, how he deals with the customers. There are many things that go into selecting an individual as your leadership person. And also today, it's quite important for anybody in a leadership position to have some basic understanding of technology also. So sometimes that's also an added advantage, especially somebody who heads retail banking has to understand technology, because that's where the world is going. So, but if you see my entire leadership team, different people have different strengths. And the important thing is to decide what that role demands and the individual's strength and marry the two. That's really the trick or the catch. And if you do that well, then you get the right performance.
So how to ensure that you're building yourself dynamically and experiencing as much as you can in your 20s to shape your career in the best way possible?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. How to ensure that you're building yourself dynamically in your 20s to shape your career in the best way possible?
So in your 20s, I would just advise again that keep keep absorbing as much knowledge as you can. So, for example, I even today read at least 4 newspapers daily, and it's about being topical. Also, if for example you're a finance student, ensure that you have a lot of economics knowledge. Try and listen to, for example, the governor's speech, this, that. Try and today you all are really fortunate. You have wealth of information at your fingertips, but it's all about knowledge broadening. Use your weekends not always for just watching movies or mingling with friends, but once in a while take out that 1 or 2 hours to do something which is of interest. For example, when I have spare time, I will just go on the net and listen to some speeches of people that I admire or whatever. Sometimes I follow a lot of people I admire on Twitter, listen to them. Just do things that keep on adding to your knowledge and broadening your horizons. That's very important, because as I explained, when I started my career, there was nothing like internet. Today I have to decide the technology, the thing for the bank. For example, in our bank now, Reserve Bank has said we have to do data localization, which means your systems have to be brought onshore. Now, that kind of complexity, if you don't learn, you will never be able to decide the technology suitability for your bank. Not that you don't have a technology person assisting you, but finally it's your decision. If you don't understand, what will you decide? So it's all about broadening your horizon.
Did you always know that you wanted to become a CA, and how did you get on to that path?
I only knew what I didn't want to do. I knew that I didn't want to be a doctor because I couldn't stand the sight of blood. So in those days, there were only 3-4 things that people chose, right? Either you become a doctor, engineer, or you get into MBA or CA. Those were the 4-5 things. It was very narrow. Those days, mobility was not as much as it is today. So I landed up in commerce because I didn't want to do science because I didn't want to be a doctor. So I landed up by default in commerce. And then after commerce, there are only MBA or CA options. That's how I landed up being a CA, nothing else.
Can you recommend some professional courses or certifications that will help to enter the banking industry?
See, frankly, we take people with all kinds of backgrounds for this thing. So any MBA, any CA, anybody who's done undergrad with banking courses. So it's a wide spectrum of people that we take, actually. And of course, then you hit the job running and you learn along the way. So.
Okay. So one question is that what are some books that you would recommend for everyone to read?
Oh, I haven't read a book for a long time. Because if I start, I have this thing that I have to end it, and I never get to end it. So I've stopped reading novels. It's very tough for me. So I wouldn't be the right person to, but I love reading autobiographies. For example, Steve Jobs I love those kinds of novels to read because I can relate to it. I can learn from it. So I like those kinds, like Elon Musk or whatever. Those successful entrepreneurs is something that I enjoy reading, but I don't get that much time.
Okay. And I think one really popular question is, does MBA still have as much value as it did before?
Of course. See, I feel MBA, and all of you, I'm sure, will find that as you go along. MBA is a great passport for you to join an organization. But after 1 or 2 years, it's what you do on the job which is relevant. Unless you're shifting jobs, then your educational thing is looked at. But at the end of the day, after 5, 7, 10 years, people don't look at your educational qualifications as much as they look at what have you achieved in that period of the thing. But MBA certainly helps you get into the right organization. It's a great starting point. And I would say you should never miss that opportunity that MBA gives you to get that right platform. in the right organization. That is really how MBA helps you.
One question is, what's your take on blockchain in banking?
So blockchain is just one of the technologies that you use in banking, and it's usually used in trade, but it's not extensively used in other parts of the bank. So I think blockchain has got overhyped because of cryptocurrency, but it's not something that is extensively used in the banking circles.
Okay. One question is, can you ask ma'am how the young generation who have the potential to come out from their comfort zone?
Young generation who has potential, sorry?
So basically, I think what he's trying to ask is, how can they come out from their comfort zone?
I think it's an attitude issue to come out of your comfort zone. Frankly, there is, I sometimes feel the new generation sometimes has parents who are quite well placed and they don't have the drive or the energy or the enthusiasm to sort of work hard. That is what I find sometimes very successful parents don't have kids who are as driven and as motivated as the parents. So, but that's an individual thing. I feel that it's very much an individual thing. And the sooner you come out of your comfort zone, the better you are, because that's where the drive and the ambition will be high. So
I think we'll take our last question for today.
Yeah, I think a lot of our viewers have this question about how they can join Standard Chartered, and is there any internships available, because that's like a constant question coming in the Q&A.
So internship, we have a process where people have to apply and then they are shortlisted. I'm not very familiar with the process, but there's a process of applying and then getting selected. That's my understanding.
I think we'll conclude our session for today. So on a concluding note, I would just like to take this opportunity to thank you, ma'am, for making the time to interact with us and to provide us with some amazing insights and resources and learnings. The mantra that you mentioned has really stayed with me and impacted me, and it's something that I'm going to follow in my life as well. At the same time, I would like to thank IMS and Aspire for Her for this collaborative initiative and to provide students with a chance to interact with you. And we're also streaming this live on YouTube and LinkedIn if you all would want to see it again. And if you're a girl in the age bracket of 18 to 25, please do sign up as a member for Aspire for Her. And the boys can sign up as supporters. And we provide career resources for free. Again, thank you so much for being here, ma'am. It was a pleasure to have a conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wish you all the very best. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much. We were very grateful that you could make the time out of a busy schedule in spite of all the raging pandemic all around us. And I know there are loads of questions which are still there, and questions are still sort of flying thick and fast. And I promise you that, we will definitely invite Zareen ma'am back again for some more questions. But meanwhile, if you do want to talk about banking or about banking careers, Aspire for Her has a whole lot of mentors who you can reach out to. They're all listed on our website. And if you are a part of us, then we will ensure that we have many more opportunities like this of interacting with Zareen and with a whole lot of others. In fact, the next two people that we have on our Finance Spotlight Month, and we're starting off the Finance Spotlight Month with Zareen. We're very proud to do that. We have two people. We have Radhika Gupta, CEO of Edelweiss AMC. She's a very, very inspirational figure herself. And we have Manisha Girotra, who is also our mentor. And some of you had questions around private equity and investment banking. And I'm sure Manisha will also be happy to answer all of those questions. We have her on 30th of this month and Radhika's on 21st of this month. So we have a very exciting month ahead. It's just the beginning. And we thought that Zareen would be the best person to kick off what we call the Finance Spotlight. So with that, thank you so much, all of you, for listening to us and for being a very, very interactive audience. And I think if at all we haven't managed to answer all the questions, but that's why Aspire for Her is there. Just sign up, be with us, and we will be happy to answer all your career questions and ensure that all of you have wonderful careers ahead. Have a great evening. Thank you, Zareen. Thank you, Ashna, Jaita, and Abhishek from IMS. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wishing all the viewers great careers. All the very best.
Thank you. Should we end the call?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Can do.
Should I
Thank
end?
you.
Yeah.
Yes, I can end. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.